sometimes, even though you expect something to happen, and it's completely predictable, you're still sort of gobsmacked when it does. It's a bit cryptic, I know, but I'm talking about Jordan Hugill, as you'll know from the title of the video. And it's about his transfer to Norwich. Now, we all knew it was coming, but when it did, I still thought, well, what a terrible business deal this has been for West Ham United. And yes, look, I say we all knew it was coming. It might have been Norwich, it might have been QPR, it might have been somebody else. But we all knew that at some point, Jordan Hugill would be signing for a championship club. And I do want to, before I start to get into the nitty-gritty of the deal and just the whole transfer saga and West Ham's transfer policy as a whole, I do want to separate the man, the player, from the deal itself, because he clearly is a very nice guy. He clearly had a dream and ambition to play in the Premier League, and I think only the most cold-hearted person would think they didn't want Jordan Hugill to work out at West Ham. I wish he'd have turned out to be an excellent player. It would have been an excellent transfer, and he'd have achieved his lifelong ambition to play Premier League football on a regular basis. Okay, there was no ill feelings towards Jordan Hugill. Put that to one side, though. Look at the deal in itself. Now, I am totally... I don't need any persuading that football and the country itself is in a recession. You don't have to convince me that the value of a football player is less now than it was 6 months ago. Granted, but I don't want this deal to be wrapped up as that. Because even without the coronavirus, Jordan Hugill still would have been sold at a loss. Even if none of this football lockdown had happened, we weren't getting our 9-10 million back. And I think that really is the point here, because when you look at the Ajeti deal as well, I think the same can be said for that. Even without any coronavirus, we're still selling Ajeti at a loss. And it brings into focus how we buy and sell players, which is terribly, actually. And we're looking at huge losses on those players, and this is only the start. We still got to factor in, if we get rid of Felipe Anderson, which, as you know, I think will happen at the end of this window at some time. I expect us to get our pants pulled down on that one. The only reason we're probably not selling Sebastian Haller, I do think he's a good player, you know this, but I think that is so much of a loss that can't be done. But I think we're going to make losses all over the place. And what's the word I'm looking for? Our valuation of players seems completely unrealistic, both when we sign them and when we tie them down to these long contracts. In many respects, we're sort of quite lucky that Jordan Hugill is the nice lad he is, which is, he was on, I believe it's 35 grand a week at West Ham. He's ready to take a 15 grand a week drop in wages to play for Norwich, at 20 grand a week. Now, not everybody will do that. As you know, a lot of players will just sit down and sit on their wages and collect their money. And I guess who can blame them on that? But you look at West Ham's transfer policy. Where are we going with this? Why is there no foresight? Why are these scattergun purchases made? Now, it's not as if this was even a Pellegrini signing, by the way. You know, this one's, everybody that was involved in this is pretty much at the club. This one's on David Moyes. This one's on David Sullivan. Everybody said, go back and look at the comments. You don't need to. You remember, everybody said, what's going on here? It's a bad deal. It was a desperate deal. It's towards the end of the transfer window, and we perhaps needed to make something happen. Now, again, I'm willing to accept that has not happened this time, with Souček and Bowen seem like very, very different deals. But still, it was only ever going to make a loss. I just don't know what anyone saw in that deal that thought, actually, this is going to be a good thing to West Ham. Because what's happening is, at the moment, we're absolutely hemorrhaging money. And I look at it, on the comments the other day on one of the videos, somebody said, oh, please stop saying that the club are skint. You're giving the board an excuse. You're giving the board now. Well, I'm not, because both things can be true. You can be critical of the board can have done a bad job, and we can be skint. Because does it really matter whether we don't have the money or whether they just won't put any in? I don't think it matters. The point of the matter is, there's a lack of finance at the club. Whether you believe they should put their own money in, or what, they won't. They won't put any more of their own money in. They've just put the £30 million in as a rights issue. They're probably desperate to take money out of the club. So it just shows how desperate we are for money. Now, as I understand it, this deal to Norwich is £2.5–3 million up front, and it could rise to £5 million if all the planets align and Norwich go on, I'd get promoted or something like that. We don't know the minute detail, but you get the gist. I think the reason we've gone for this deal in particular is because normally, let's say somebody had offered 5 million guaranteed with no add-ons. It was just a 5 million straight fee. Normally that 5 million gets played over 5 seasons. Well, that's £1 million a season. I think the very reason we've done this is that we've got either £2.5 or £3 million now, and we are, quite frankly, we're lucky that it's Norwich that we're doing business with at the moment. Really, really lucky, because they've got a parachute payment. They've actually got money in the bank. In Championship terms, they're a rich club, and they've got a damn good striker. Having said everything that I've said about Jordan Hugill, of course, which is I don't think he's good enough for the Premier League. Actually, for the Championship, he's a damn good striker. He scored well for QPR last season. He will score well for Norwich next season. Will he get in ahead of Pukki? I'm not so sure. Okay, I think he might be the reserve striker or come as a sub and sometimes start, sometimes not. But it's a good price for them, for somebody that they know can score goals at that level. And again, I'm prepared to accept that the market value of those players has depreciated. But just what a terrible bit of business this is. How skint are we that we're having to accept all these derisory offers for the players that come along for clubs? At the moment, apparently we're looking, I think it came out the other day, we'd be willing to accept 10 to 15 million, or was it 10 to 12 million for Arthur Masuaku? Are you having a laugh? Nobody's coming along to pay that. They're just not going to do it, because people, whether they see West Ham for what we are, which is skint, and I think a lot of clubs are skint, let me just say that, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. The point of the matter is, we've got to have assets that somebody else wants to buy, and people are just not desperate enough for our players. The one saving grace may well be that it looks like Chelsea are spending money like it's going out of fashion. They can't continue to spend like that. So it looks like if they sign this Kai Havertz for 90 million, are they going to have another 60, 70, 80 million for Declan Rice? No, I would imagine not. They've not got, I was going to say they haven't got an oil well. Maybe they do. But you know what I mean. They're not going to carry that on. But I'll tell you what, us with our assets, I do worry what's going to happen with Lanzini. I think we're going to get a derisory offer for Lanzini. I think we'll have to let him go if anybody wants him. The big one that's going to comment I see on there, sell Anderson, sell Anderson. You know, to who? We are going to have to accept whatever we get offered. 50 pence and a curly-whirly, look, you know what, we'll have to take it just to get his wages off. We all know what Lazio are going to do. As Kevin from Sex, Drugs, Carlton Cole said, he did a tweet the other day, basically said they're basically going to say, we'll take him for the money that you owe us. So we won't get any money for Anderson. But what I think is interesting, and this is really the point with the Hugill rant over for now, to see what David Moyes does with the money. And that's assuming that there is money, by the way. I do think there will be. I do think they'll give it to David Moyes, because actually, if we get this loan fee in for Ajeti, if we get this money in for Hugill, and actually David Moyes doesn't get to bring anyone in, then it's far worse, the financial situation at West Ham, I mean, than any of us really thought it was. But let's say David Moyes has got that money. So let's say he's got the money that he saved on wages, and not just Ajeti and Hugill. He's got the money saved on wages from Zabaleta, from Sanchez. Missing someone as well, aren't I? But you know what I mean? There's a decent £200,000-300,000 worth, I think, of savings there in wages, plus a bit of money in the pot. Well, £200,000-300,000 a week does add up. So let's say David Moyes has got £6 or £7 million to spend. It's going to be really interesting to see what his first priority is. Because I think we all know what we think it should be. But the fact of the matter is, I have an inkling that it might be the centre-half. I think if what happens is we actually sign this as I just can't see it. I can't see that at the moment. If this is all the money we've got, Eze may well get signed. If we got rid of Lanzini, if we got rid of Anderson or stuff like that, you may well find that someone like that gets signed. But at the moment, it's a defender. And if what's going to happen is he's going to take that money, the Hugill money and the money saved on wages, and buy a central defender, then it makes me wonder what the plan is with a fullback. Because David Moyes surely must see what we all see. I don't know. Look, this is all guesswork. It really is. But I tell you what, just refer back to what I said at the start of the video. Even though I knew that this was coming, this terrible, terrible deal for West Ham was on the horizon, still when it comes, you look at it just from a simple, forget football, from a simple buying and selling standpoint, you can't keep hemorrhaging money. You can't keep, as a football club, making these losses time after time. Because at some point, what you'd have to do is make a whopping great profit, and you all know what I'm talking about, on one player to offset all the losses of all the other players. Anyway, that's it. I've uploaded this a little bit earlier today because we've got 2 games today. Because we've got Ipswich and we've got Wickham. So we're going to be covering those on Hammer's Chat. I don't know exactly what we're doing. I'd be interested to see what Moyes... does. So which one? Obviously Moyes, unless he's made a carbon copy of himself, Moyes can only be at one of those games. So I expect we'll see the better team at one of those games. So anyway, we'll try and cover both as best we can. I don't know. It's going to be really, really interesting. Number 1, to see what formation plays. Number 2, to see who is involved. And just a comment on the video. When I was at the Boozer with the lads, and somebody said about 3 at the back. I can't quite shift from my mind that Moyes wants to revert to 3 at the back. So I am going to be very, very interested to look at the tactics, because if we do see that he does revert to 3 at the back, it may well give the answer as to why David Moyes is looking for a centre-back and not a full-back.